They say the heart doesn't just break, it shatters into 1,000 jagged pieces that cut you every time you try to pick them up. My name is Sarah, and for 10 years I thought I was living a fairy tale. I had the house with the white picket fence, a career I loved, and most importantly, I had Mark. Mark was the kind of man people envied. He was charming, successful, and always knew exactly what to say to make me feel like the only woman in the world. On our 10th anniversary, he took me to the very spot where he proposed. The wind was biting, but I didn't feel the cold because his arms were around me. He looked into my eyes and promised that the next 10 years would be even better than the first. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? But looking back, the signs were there. The subtle shifts in the atmosphere of our home. The way his phone was suddenly glued to his palm like a second skin. The late nights at the office that started happening once, then twice, then 4 times a week. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that after a decade, the honeymoon phase just looks different. I was wrong. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being played. It started with a single notification, a flicker of light on the nightstand while he was in the shower. I didn't mean to look, I really didn't. But the name that popped up wasn't a client. It wasn't his boss. It was a heart emoji followed by a message that said, "I can't wait for our weekend away. I miss your touch already." In that second, the world stopped spinning. The air left the room. I felt a coldness spread from my chest to my fingertips that had nothing to do with the winter air outside. My husband, my partner, my best friend, was planning a getaway with someone else. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I just sat there, staring at the screen until it went dark, reflecting my own pale, shocked face. The man singing in the shower, just 3 feet away from me, was a stranger. And little did he know, the woman sitting on the edge of the bed was no longer the soft, trusting wife he thought he could control. The game had started. He just didn't know he was losing yet. The next morning, I woke up before him. I watched him sleep, the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, the peaceful expression on his face. How could someone lie so effortlessly? How could he kiss me goodnight after sending a message like that? I realized then that if I confronted him now, he would just lie. He was an expert at it. He would call me crazy, he would delete the evidence, and he would turn it around on me until I was the one apologizing. I wasn't going to let that happen. If I was going to destroy the web of lies he'd spun, I needed to be the one holding the threads. I began my investigation with the precision of a surgeon. I didn't change my behavior. I still made his coffee, I still kissed him goodbye, and I still listened to him complain about his stressful projects. But every time he turned his back, I was digging. I found the credit card statements he thought he'd hidden. There were charges for jewelry I never wore, dinners at restaurants I'd never visited, and a hotel booking for the upcoming weekend at a luxury resort 3 hours away. Then I found her. Her name was Elena. She was 10 years younger, a junior associate at his firm. I looked through her social media. She wasn't even hiding it. She posted pictures of surprises from my mystery man, a bouquet of roses I recognized from our local florist, a bracelet that matched a charge on our joint account. Every discovery was a physical blow. I spent my lunch breaks crying in my car, gasping for breath, feeling like I was drowning. But the moment I stepped back into our house, the mask went back on. I became an actress in my own life. I started documenting everything. I took photos of the statements. I screenshotted the messages. I even hired a private investigator to follow them during one of their late nights. When the PI sent me the photos of them together, walking hand in hand, laughing, him looking at her the way he used to look at me, I didn't cry. The sadness was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, hard, unyielding anger. I realized that Mark didn't just want a mistress. He wanted the life I provided while he played his games on the side. I was his stability, his housekeeper, his social proof. Elena was his toy. He thought he could have both. He thought I was too weak, too settled to ever notice or leave. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Mark," I whispered to his picture that night. The weekend getaway was approaching. He told me he had a corporate retreat in the mountains. I smiled, packed his bag, and even put a little note inside that said, "I hope you get exactly what you deserve." He thanked me, kissed my cheek, and walked out the door. He thought he was going to a romantic escape. He didn't realize he was walking straight into a trap I had spent 3 weeks carefully setting. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I didn't break down, I didn't collapse. I picked up the phone. The first call was to a real estate agent. The second was to a high-powered divorce attorney my friend had recommended. The third was to his mother. Now, Mark's mother, Evelyn, is a woman of high principles. She worshipped the ground her son walked on, but she loathed dishonesty. We had always been close. I invited her over for tea, and I didn't sugarcoat anything. I showed her the photos. I showed her the bank statements. I watched as her face turned from confusion to absolute horror. "I didn't raise him to be this man," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know you didn't, Evelyn," I said gently. "But this is who he is now, and I need your help to make sure he understands the weight of what he's thrown away." Next, I turned my attention to the house. While Mark was retreating with Elena, I was busy. I had already secured a new apartment in secret. Now, it was time to clear out the history. But I didn't just pack my things, I packed everything. I called a moving company. I told them I was staging the house for a surprise renovation. By Saturday afternoon, the house was a shell. Every piece of furniture I had paid for, every decoration, every memory, gone. I left him his clothes, his vanity mirror, and a single lawn chair in the middle of the living room. But the real revenge wasn't just taking the furniture. It was the corporate retreat. You see, Mark's boss was a man who valued family integrity above all else. The company was old-fashioned, and they had a strict morality clause for their senior partners. Mark was up for a massive promotion, the kind of promotion that would change our lives forever. I knew that Elena was also an employee. Relationship between a partner and an associate? That was a direct violation of company policy. I didn't send an anonymous tip, that's too easy to ignore. Instead, I waited until Saturday night, when I knew they would be at the resort's gala dinner. I knew this because I had seen the itinerary on his business email. I dressed in my best black dress. I did my hair and makeup until I looked like a woman who was about to conquer the world, not a woman whose husband was cheating. I drove those 3 hours in total silence, the engine's hum the only sound in the dark. I arrived at the resort. The lobby was grand, filled with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume. I could hear the music from the ballroom. I walked toward it, my heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown. I stood at the entrance. There they were. Mark was at a table near the front, laughing, holding Elena's hand under the table while he chatted with his CEO. I took a deep breath. It was time for the show to begin. I walked into the ballroom with the measured grace of someone who knew exactly how the night was going to end. As I moved through the tables, Mark hadn't seen me yet. He was too busy leaning into Elena. I reached the table and stood directly behind him. The CEO, Mr. Sterling, was the first to look up. "Sarah?" he stammered. "Mark said you were quite ill." Mark froze. He turned slowly, and when his eyes met mine, I saw pure terror. I leaned down and pressed a cold kiss to his cheek, telling him my migraine had cleared up miraculously. I turned to the CEO and mentioned how impressive it was that Mark brought the office to the dinner table. Then I looked at Elena and noted how Mark had told me so much about the overtime they put in together. The table went deathly silent. Mark tried to pull me away, but I simply unhooked his fingers. I pulled out the photos, the bistro, the boutique, the kisses in the parking lot, and slid them onto the table for the CEO to see. I mentioned the morality clause in the senior partner contract. I told Mark not to bother rushing home because the renovations had started and there was a chair waiting for him in the living room. Then I walked out. Mark stumbled after me, desperate and sweating. He claimed the photos were photoshopped, that she was just an associate he was mentoring. I asked if he mentored all associates with diamond bracelets from our mortgage money. He tried the crazy wife defense, telling his boss I was having a breakdown. I countered by mentioning that my attorney had the metadata and GPS logs. I dropped the legal envelope at his feet, divorce papers, a restraining order for the accounts, and the notice of the house sale. The CEO told Mark he was no longer with the firm. Mark stood there paralyzed, surrounded by colleagues but utterly alone. He had lost his job, his reputation, and his wife in one night. Mark returned to a house that was a dark, echoing shell. He found his mother, Evelyn, waiting there in the shadows. He tried to claim I had lost my mind, but she told him to sit in the only thing left, the plastic lawn chair. She told him she watched me pack and realized those weren't just items being moved. They were the respect and love he had squandered. She told him his CEO had called and that she no longer had a son she recognized. She walked out, leaving him to the silence of the life he destroyed. He tried to fight back legally, but sitting in that glass conference room, he realized he was outmatched. I showed him that for every dollar he spent on his mistress, I had moved an equal amount into a protected trust, using his own gift receipts as the legal precedent. His lawyer dropped his briefcase. There was nothing left to fight for. When he went to Elena for comfort, she wouldn't even let him up to her condo. She told him he was no longer a power player, but a liability. She had only wanted the successful version of him. A year later, I had a new life. I used the settlement to start my own consultancy firm. I found peace in a sunny loft and success on my own terms. I met Mark by chance one rainy afternoon. He was huddled by a subway entrance, looking small and frayed, fumbling with a broken umbrella. I walked across the street, not out of spite, but out of curiosity. He looked at my tailored coat and my car and admitted he had made a mistake. I told him he wasn't sorry he hurt me. He was just sorry he lost. As I drove away, I realized the last thread had snapped. Trust is a bridge that takes years to build, but only seconds to burn. When you break that trust, you lose the foundation of your own future. I learned never to be an option when I was born to be a priority. Revenge wasn't about being cruel, it was about demanding the respect I was denied and moving forward with my head held high. Anything built on a lie is destined to crumble, but what I built on the truth was made to last.